It has always been ringing behind my head. Will you fit in? How will our customers look at you?
Many people think they are left out because of the impairments they have, but they are left out because the workplace is totally not accessible for them.
Give us a chance. Give me a chance. Because most of them, they just look at you and judge you.
My experience, I have always experienced a challenge in communication barrier. Every time I want to get an access to an office, there is that communication barrier.
Sightsavers has been running Wild Cafes. They are creative focus group discussions. The sentiments that are expressed by the job seekers with disabilities, especially when they talk about their ambitions, their hopes and dreams are pretty much the same as those without disabilities. However, the challenges they express that they undergo when trying to find jobs are really great.
This is someone who is trying to communicate, but there is a barrier here.
What they are doing is they are drawing representations of their aspirations, their ambitions. They are also drawing challenges that they have gone through, as well as the message that they have for the private sector employers.
Because they will know these are the kind of challenges these people have.
Inclusion works very simply, builds the disability confidence of employers and the employment confidence of job seekers with disabilities, and then acts as a bridge between the two.
We've had staff with disability work amongst us over the years. It's been a journey of learning and relearning and unlearning. There are many things that we have believed that we knew, and they have taught us a lot. I think there is a bit more work that we need to do, and that is what we are being asked to look at.
Sightsavers is encouraging employers to hold open days with people with disabilities because they provide the employers an opportunity to hear directly from the job seekers with disabilities. It also provides an opportunity for the job seekers with disabilities to interact with the employers and know that the employers are actually approachable.
The fact that they were open for a discussion with us, that really changed a lot. Earlier on, I thought about Standard Chartered and I thought, no, it wasn't an employable environment. But that notion changed on that day.
The experience at Standard Chartered was very exciting. First company opening up their doors to have such discussions on issues not everybody wants to discuss about. That stood out for me.
Populations which have more inclusive people with them do better in terms of business. But away from the research, we believe in Standard Chartered. It's simply the right thing to do. When I think about this country, there is a lot of goodwill. People want to do the right thing.
We want to appeal to the private sector to have the face of Kenya in your organizations. The face of Kenya includes persons with disability. They should take advantage of the opportunities that have been opened by government in terms of incentives.
We feel that persons with disability need to be contacted and give input on how best they should be accommodated in the society and not be spoken for.
Persons with disabilities are looking for good jobs that they can make careers out of, and that's the opportunity for us in the private sector or in the public sector or in the non-government organizations to then come out and just make it happen.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. My name is Freo Tadese. I'm a junior technical officer at the ILO. I would like to welcome all of you on behalf of Stefan Trommel, who will be joining us in a few minutes, skipping from other meeting. So thank you all for joining us today. I just want to communicate some housekeeping issues during our webinar. As you can see on your screen, at the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A box that you would be able to ask question to the panelists. We also have a chat box that you would be able to interact with all the participants. We are also providing international sign, as you can see on your screen. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see captioning. If you click on CC at the bottom of your screen, you'd be able to enable the captioning. And you also have the option to adjust the font size of the captioning. We are broadcasting this webinar live on Facebook. We are also recording the webinar to send it to you all after the webinar. I think you will enjoy this very interesting webinar joined by great panelists. I will now give the floor to Simon Brown, who will be moderating this webinar. Over to you, Simon. Simon, I think you are muted.
Oh, I apologize. Yes, so thank you, Free. It's a wonderful moment for us after many months of effort to launch our definitive guidance on the corporate best practice called Disability Confidence. We launch it under the Inclusive Futures banner, which is a 6-year disability inclusion initiative funded by UKAid. That's a very tremendous platform for promoting inclusion, not only in employment, but also in health and education systems. Before I hand over to Susan Scott Parker and introduce her, it's also important to recognize the huge effort that the International Disability Alliance's Inclusive Livelihoods Task Team gave to us in reviewing and editing and guiding us in the development of these resources. So I do want to say a particular thank you to the task team, and we are lucky to have one of the task team with us, hopefully this morning, Kimber Bialik, joining us, I think at 4 o'clock in the morning from Canada, which is a tremendous effort. So let me introduce Susan Scott Parker, who is the founder of Business Disability International, as well as an author, and has led very much the development of the toolkit that we're going to introduce you this morning. It's a great pleasure then to hand over to her to talk us through the toolkit that we have now developed. So Susan, over to you. Let me just briefly share my screen.
Right, and there they are, looking concrete, even though they're going to be available in soft versions, of course. Thank you very much, Simon. Well, you know, after that wonderful video, I love the line from Standard Charter, just make it happen. This could be a really short webinar. We could just sort of say, let's just make it happen. However, our theme for the launch of this best practice business-focused toolkit is making it easier for the employer to say yes. So I want to just take a moment to clarify. These unique practical guides are designed to meet the needs and expectations of business, because we have learned that making it easier for employers to say yes inevitably makes it easier for job seekers with disabilities to find meaningful employment and careers. By yes, we mean, yes, we will invest in learning how to deliver the best practice that brings mutual benefit to the organization and to persons with disabilities. Yes, we will invest in learning how to recruit everyone fairly on the basis of individual capability and potential. And yes, we know that the best, probably only way to get this right for both our companies and the societies in which we operate is to learn directly from persons with disabilities as colleagues and potential colleagues, customers, as expert advisors, and ultimately as fellow citizens. These guides are firmly grounded in the reality of disability as it impacts any business, but they will also be required reading for those organizations which, because they serve job seekers, must also offer employers a consistent high standard of advice and support. I must stress from the outset that if we are to get better outcomes, if we're going to enable significantly more people with disabilities to contribute to economic growth and to the post-COVID rebuild in particular, both employers and the disability sector will need to learn from experience and do things differently. The Inclusion Works Consortium is to be commended for addressing the economic exclusion of persons with disabilities at a systemic level as labor market failure, rather than continuing to rely on the traditional short-term project-based interventions. What we're ultimately after in any labor market is to get a better balance between the services that in effect push people with disabilities at the world of work in general, and those which help employers to pull suitable candidates for particular vacancies as they become available. So I was asked to talk about what's in the box. Well, time limits mean I'm going to have to just rattle through some of this, but I wanted just to give you a feeling for some of the contents. First, we've got a PowerPoint presentation for use by business leaders wanting to convey the economic and ethical case for the best practice that we call disability confidence. It presents the benefits of learning how to recruit everyone fairly. It presents the rationale for any business having the disability and accessibility expertise in-house, which enables you to provide everyone with the tools and flexibility that they require so as to enhance productivity and employee engagement. The presentation is designed to make it easier for our many senior champions who do want to get this right to convey this new rationale as they explain to their colleagues the benefits of learning how to adapt for human reality, which ultimately is what we're talking about, how to personalize the workplace. All the while, and this is a theme throughout these materials, all the while enabling dignified and equitable access and inclusion for all. Now, we can define and measure this corporate best practice that I branded disability confidence way back in 2003. A disability confident employer understands the impact of disability on their organization. They remove the obstacles and barriers that prevent access for groups. They adapt and adjust for individuals to enable their contributions. And they don't make assumptions about human potential on the basis of any label. So this presentation is backed by a chief executive's 10-point strategic planning framework. We called it a 10-point agenda for action, which again makes it easier for the senior team to get a sense of where they might target their first work in terms of systematically improving their disability performance across the entire business. And of course, we've got guides focused on recruitment. So there's a basic recruiter's checklist helping to create a recruitment process that is both welcoming and barrier-free for candidates with disabilities at every step, from attract, assess, appoint, and of course the onboarding so that the individual starts with a firm wind behind them. There are 36 straightforward must-dos here. Now, in addition, we have more detailed guidance for HR, for recruiters, hiring managers, on how to make the adjustments at every stage which enable candidates to demonstrate their potential. Throughout, we're reminding the reader that we make adjustments in order to create a level playing field. This is about equal opportunities. It's not about special treatment. It is about fair treatment. Another guide is focused on how to interview candidates. Though we would stress these practical tips have wider application day to day for any manager or team member working alongside colleagues who have disabilities. So some basic tips in terms of interviewing often reflect best practice in interviewing anyone. For example, describe the interview process and ask every candidate, how can we make it easier for you to demonstrate your potential? And yes, there is specific guidance in terms of common courtesies and communication and respectful language for use when interviewing people with a wide range of different types of disabilities. And in particular, we've got a guide on how to design and deliver first-shot targeted recruitment projects. In essence, these projects see the employers first opening particular vacancies to a talent pool of pre-screened candidates who have a disability. These applicants are then assessed and appointed based on their capability and potential to do the job. In the event the vacancy cannot be filled from this first-shot talent pool, the employer returns to their standard process. Now, this requires both the employer and organizations enabling job seekers with disabilities to restructure how they work together so as to create this better push-pull balance in the local labor market. Really pleased to see our colleagues in Bangladesh are now working to this framework with Unilever, and I know Murtaza will be talking in more detail about that later this morning. And then we came to what I was going to describe as this hugely important guide. They're all hugely important, I guess, but this one kind of underpins everything. It's how business can learn directly from people with disabilities and why that really matters. So this is learning directly from your colleagues with disabilities, potential colleagues, as expert advisors, your valued customers, including, how to contact local organizations of persons with disabilities who can advise you and connect you. And in particular, my favorite piece of this is how to celebrate progress together. We need to see more of what Standard Charter were saying in the video, leaders from the world of business and leaders from the world of disability, building those personal relationships that are essential if we're going to drive real change together. And so the message here is have a party every December 3rd, or a party because summer's arrived, or because it's Friday, to bring people together to say, we're making progress, how can we both do better next time? And we've got a guide on accessible and inclusive communications. Now this is of course particularly timely as the world discovers that captions are not just for the deaf and hard of hearing, it's for people working remotely in a second language. Captions help people with noisy home environments. I mean, I can go on and on as you're all so familiar with this new reality. The guide ranges from how to make PowerPoints accessible. Thank heavens that couldn't be easier now, to print, to videos, to social media, and so on. I suggest that it should be required reading for every communications director anywhere. I was particularly pleased that we were able to craft the first such concise disability discrimination legal briefings, helping employers in Bangladesh, Kenya, Nigeria, Uganda, through concisely crafted documents to understand their legal obligations, and in particular to understand why, in the context of the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, it has become very clear that only best practice can actually transform legal obligation in any jurisdiction to business and societal benefit. And then finally, another hugely important guide, the one called Investing in Human Potential. This is helping business leaders to leverage their substantial influence as allies of the disability movement, working in partnership with organizations of persons with disabilities to position disability as a business and a human rights priority in the communities in which they're so influential. We all have to remember it is impossible to deliver on the sustainable development goals if persons with disabilities are left behind. Ensuring that corporate investments in corporate responsibility and sustainability activities actively enable the economic and societal inclusion of 15 to 20% of the country's population who have disabilities, enabling their inclusion as valued stakeholders and citizens of the communities in which you operate will actually ensure greater return on investment. We encourage supporters of the Valuable 500 campaign and of the Purple Light Up movement to drive, again, better return on the investment of their time and communications there by encouraging, dare I say, requiring mainstream community programs, public-private sector partnerships, their suppliers, the education system locally, to enable dignified and equitable access and inclusion for all, including, I want to make special reference, women and girls with disabilities, reminding your community partners that 1 in 5 women have a disability and face additional and needless barriers. So we're asking, imagine the impact where business leaders to help to build the capacity of the disability sector to meet the needs of business so that it becomes easier for persons with disabilities to realize their potential. We're encouraging employers to set out to make it easier for every employer to recruit people with disabilities by insisting that the mainstream learning and skills providers prepare learners with disabilities with the skills that you require, and then helping these education and training programs to get better employment outcomes by offering the crucially important bridge experiences, the work experience, the job tryouts, the internships, or as in Nigeria, this brilliant program that is encouraging HR professionals to become mentors, tasked with helping people with disabilities to find jobs and careers. And that has to be a classic example of the benefits of two-way mentoring. There are so many opportunities for innovative and productive partnerships at local level when business leaders and people with disabilities sit down and have the same kind of conversations that Standard Charter were featuring in their video. So if I could just close with some thoughts regarding how to get best value from these resources. I would encourage senior business leaders to very simply just require your training and development colleagues to build the content of these guides into your standard mandatory management training programs, to include, of course, what you offer when you bring any newcomer in and call it onboarding. Sign the agenda for action at senior level and require routine reporting on progress. You might start with that 36-question recruiters must-do list and see, how did you do? Invite expert advisors with disabilities to use these materials to structure training and development programs which enable you to then develop this best practice. Invite organizations of persons with disabilities to join your senior leaders for a high-profile event internally to launch the toolkit internally. And then with your colleagues, work through them one by one, prompting discussion, challenge, triggering policy reviews, adding your own case studies to these materials, because of course this is open source, which is fantastic. And finally, offer to host training events, senior roundtable discussions for your national business disability networks, asking how can we as a business community together gain best value from these resources locally. And then just a final thought, actually, I wanted to stress that these guides will make it easier for organizations helping people with disabilities to find jobs and careers, because it will make it easier for them to meet the needs and expectations of business as valued service users and potential partners. I would encourage all and any organizations that serve job seekers to see these as required reading, because it helps you to better understand the employer as your valued service user. And as you actively promote these guides, you are all the while enhancing the life chances of persons with disabilities, because at every step, we are making it easier for the employer to say yes. Thank you very much. Oh, and we're looking forward to your feedback. Tell us what we need to do next.
Thank you, Susan. And that was tremendous. Now, we've got a fantastic panel of experts from employers to organizations of people with disabilities to business and disability networks. And before I introduce the first of those, I thought it would be very useful just to reflect on, whilst these guides are intended, of course, to promote the best practice called disability confidence, we do see already some tremendous examples of existing best practices in the countries where we are working. We saw in that initial video, Standard Chartered banks learning directly from people with disabilities. But we also see companies, even at these most difficult of times, investing in the capacity of their people. Hundreds, thousands of staff over the past few months being trained in disability confidence. Companies like Unilever in Bangladesh and in Nigeria. Safaricom, and we'll come back to Safaricom a little later. Coca-Cola Beverages Africa, of others demonstrating and piloting initiatives that prove that value chains are an incredibly important part of a company's influence, and particularly within this, Diageo and East Africa Breweries Limited in Kenya, and the piloting of employment even for farmers as part of the Inclusive Futures initiative and the Inclusion Works program. And investing in human potential. Susan mentioned the Chartered Institute of Personnel Managers in Nigeria, and the mobilizing then of HR professionals to mentor job seekers, and the immense success that has been shown in Nigeria, which we now replicate hopefully soon with the Institute of HR Management in Kenya, and then perhaps in a little while, the HR Managers Association in Nigeria, but also, again, companies like Safaricom, and investing in career fairs and events that really support the capacity building of job seekers with disabilities. And as we'll see a little later, also then the piloting of targeted recruitment programs like First Shot, and the commitment we're seeing there from Unilever in Bangladesh, but also other companies like the Swapno supermarket chain and Classical Handmade Products Bangladesh. So we're already seeing this tremendous movement within the employers that is best practice and that we need to recognize, and I think that's very important. But let me move on from there and introduce the first of the expert panels who I'm going to ask to talk around the relevance of this toolkit. And first, I'd like to invite Paul Kasimu, who's the Chief HR Officer at Safaricom in Kenya, and a huge disability champion across public, private, and development sectors, and also Peter Ndioka, who's the Head of Acquisition Capability and Talent and HR Operations at Safaricom. And it would be unimaginable, I think, to launch this toolkit without having both Paul and Peter with us, because of that leadership. And Paul, Peter, even over the last week, the training of 390 line managers in Safaricom, building their disability confidence, recognizing that as employment comes back, you want the organization to be prepared and ready to move even further forward on your disability inclusion journey. And also this week, the career fairs, also your leadership of the Global Disability Summit Forum, and of course membership of the Valuable 500. As I say, it would be unimaginable to launch this toolkit without you being here, and I'm tremendously thankful that you were able to make it. But Paul, Peter, from your perspectives, how will the toolkit make it easier for you and other employers to say yes to the best practice we call disability confidence? And perhaps some thoughts also around what maybe is missing and that we need to focus on as we move forward from this launch. Paul.
Thank you, Simon, and thank you, Susan, for that profound presentation that you shared with us. At Safaricom, we believe that disability inclusion is not only the right thing to do, but a business imperative and a human right. And we're also guided by our purpose of transforming lives and not leaving anyone behind. So we have been members of several forums, as you've said. We coordinate the Global Disability Forum in Kenya, where we have over 30 institutions together. And we also signed a Global Disability Charter, where we said we have 3 priorities around economic empowerment of people with disability, removing stigma and discrimination, and also driving assistive devices. But I think what we have seen from the resources and the toolkit that ILO has developed is bringing that to life, and a toolkit that we can use to boost our disability confidence, which was lacking previously. Employer confidence in disability is a prerequisite for inclusive employment. And we envisage the toolkit being launched today to provide definitive guidance on the corporate best practice in building disability confidence across Safaricom. I think ultimately this will result in realization of the Global Disability Summit commitments in terms of economic empowerment of persons with disability. We have set our targets in terms of the 10 principles of ILO, which we have now signed to, and we have signatories to that. But it's also targets that we've set across our organization to say we would want to be an inclusive organization that reflects the communities in which we operate. I must say that the toolkit is a game changer that will revolutionize the employer's approach to disability inclusion in the workplace. It was a missing piece that comes at the right time and will certainly add value to many organizations as we ensure we don't leave anyone behind. Finally, I think what will be useful beyond the toolkit, which will also drive the skill set and the mindset, is where we collaborate and work together. So this should not be an event, but a series of interactions and the partnerships that will enable all of us to work together and deliver what should be a great story for inclusion in Kenya. Peter, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Thank you, Simon. I think for me, it's this is a very good piece of work which will enable us now develop, globally recognized and develop content, which will be able to use during our inductions, during our trainings. And we are very lucky that we have a platform which we call Safaricom Business School, where we'll be able to post this information for consumption by all our managers and all our staff. Again, Safaricom, as we mainstream disability support and inclusion, it is very, very important to remember that it's not something we do for persons with disability, but it's something we do together with them to ensure that they are also participating in the decisions that we make, the policies, the tools that we bring to work, and everything that we do with them in mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you, Peter. That was really great insights. And Paul, absolutely, yes, that this is more than an event. Yeah, this is as you say, this has to be a series of interactions and partnerships to make it all come to life. I want to move to a very good friend of mine, Eric Ngondi, who is a board member of the United Disabled Persons of Kenya organization, specifically representing youth. He's sitting in today for Anderson Gitonga, who unfortunately has a family emergency and can't be with us. But we're very lucky that we've got Eric to substitute for him. Eric is an environmental expert and a social inclusion facilitator, as well as secretary to the Society of Professionals with Visual Disabilities in Kenya. And Eric, you and I have worked together a lot recently. But in your opinion, how will the toolkit make it easier for the disability movement, and particularly organizations of persons with disabilities, to support the best practice we call employer disability confidence? And again, what do you see as missing and that we should be focusing on next? Eric.
Thank you, Simon. And first, I want to really appreciate the amazing work that has gone into this, and also thank greatly the funders of this project. The Disability Confidence Toolkit to me is profoundly a game changer in the process of hiring and employing, and the whole process of having persons with disabilities in employment. This is because while we've for a long time advocated, created awareness, and made noise about this, there've been a gap from the employer's side taking on. Now, what the toolkit does for us is that it has brought us together on one table. So there is this documentation, and here we are, and therefore it has brought us together as a disability fraternity and employer. And I want to give an example whereby as a person with visual impairment, I'll visit an employer and they're having an aptitude test, and I'm not anticipate such a person as me at the venue or provide an alternative. And in other places I've gone for interview, I've even been asked, do I also use a wheelchair? And what I see with the toolkit, there are some of the issues such as the accessible language, accessibility audits, and even how to undertake interviews. Profoundly a great resource for both employers and persons with disabilities. And now, or maybe what do the DPOs or disability persons organization, I think they'll need moving forward, maybe building capacity training and keeping the awareness to them, or one thing that hinders disability persons organizations, of course, is the resource. So how do they undertake the accessibility audits together with the employers or willing employers now, so that this thing can be continued championed? And then furthermore, I look
Oh, Eric, we're losing you a little bit. Could you try starting that little bit again? Eric, I'll come back to you in a moment.
Maybe where they will have these documents in other, we have them as maybe large fonts in Braille.
Oh, unfortunately, I think we just lost Eric and his internet, but hopefully he'll come back, and we'll come back to Eric perhaps in a few moments. But first, let me switch then to Mortazar, Mortazar Khan, the Chief Executive Officer of the Bangladesh Business and Disability Network, and a key partner in the Inclusive Futures Initiative, partnering not only with the Site Savers-led Inclusion Works Consortium, but also with the Lena Cheshire Inclusion Innovations to Inclusion program, and a key link, a bridge between employers within that network, but also the disability organizations as resources to the network. So again, Mortazar, very similar question to you. As a key facilitator within the labour market systems, how will the toolkit make it easier for national business and disability networks to support the best practice we call in employer disability confidence? And again, what's missing and what should we be focusing on next? Mortazar, over to you.
Thanks, Simon, for this opportunity to speak here, and really appreciate the statements that have already been shared by the other speakers. So as a business and disability network, when we approach employers and towards that notion of becoming disability confident as an organization, we're really talking about a journey, that has certain processes involved and, taking certain steps at a time. And what we have seen is that employers typically take these certain steps in the journey based on their circumstances, their immediate corporate objectives, and tend to sequence and prioritize, as they are able to. So, for example, recently we've seen in light of COVID, traditional accessibility assessments have been a bit more challenging to do, whereas, training, sensitizations, other parts of the work, and even recruitment efforts are continuing. And then secondly, also based on the type of business they are, whether it's one location, one manufacturer with one office, or we're talking about a more dynamic situation with locations in different geographies, having perhaps different needs. They're very customized, solutions that are required. And at times, no one approach works in all cases. However, a framework to put things together really is effective. And I believe these tools are great in terms of filling out that framework under which employers, us as a disability network, and our member organizations who are providing a lot of technical expertise can operate. And I think the first key thing is that what I really like is that the tools are open source. They can be customized as they need to and tweaked and adapted along the way to fit the specific context and the requirements. And it's a great suggestion to hear already how this will already be incorporated into the regular corporate policies of employers. And if I were to speak particularly about the first shot as BBDN, we have had a bit more experience working with that recently in Bangladesh as an example. This is really looking at how do we bring the employer on one side with their needs, us as a system coordinator filling in this bridging process in the middle, and on the other side our recruitment partners who are working very closely to source candidates with disabilities and prepare them for the workforce, and how do we align across that entire process. And what First Shot has really helped us to do is indeed build a common understanding about what needs to be done, who's responsible for it, and how do we really put these actions into work and really harmonize that approach. And that clarity that has been provided by this framework has been really helpful for us to align those expectations and move everyone together in the right direction, taking the needs of the different stakeholders into consideration. And because it's allowing us to very closely work with all partners, it's much more responsive and adaptive to the needs. And I think that's even more required now with the pandemic and the current situations that we find on the ground. In terms of what is, I wouldn't say necessarily missing, because I find that the tools really give a very good 360 view of what's needed to become accessible from and inclusive from very different perspectives. Perhaps a roadmap document that kind of ties all of them together. I heard Susan earlier mention about a 10-point agenda or something that from which a lot of this flowed out. Maybe if there was something to that effect which can help employers to see the entire journey and which tools can be utilized for what parts in that journey could perhaps be beneficial. But we're really excited to be working with these and really appreciate the effort that's been put in to bring these into fruition. Thanks, Simon.
Thank you, Morteza, and thank you for the insights there on that that roadmap. Yeah, we'll take that very much on board. Eric, I want to just quickly switch back to you if your internet is a little bit more stable. We did hear very well the first part of your conversation on how the toolkit will make it easier for you. But if you are there, and if you could just give us a short minute or two on where you think we should be further focusing on what's missing. We heard a little bit, the line was very disrupted around large print and braille versions, but what else should we be focusing on?
Yeah, thank you, Simon, and very apologetic about that. Technology sometimes can come a problem, but yeah, just to add that. So now, what not so missing, but maybe what's needed, it will be the capacity building for disability persons organizations, so that these tools are undertaken together with the employers. For example, accessibility auditing. And then we are looking at just developing capacity for DPOs in terms of advocacy, awareness, and just continuing championing these issues. And then I also mentioned that maybe further down, we can consider into having them into one pocket, such as an app or an application, whereby I carry my phone everywhere, and phone is the whole people have phones left, right, and center, where I can have it on my phone and just access this paramount resource. And it can also be an area where I can also gain some maybe soft skills on all these issues that you are talking about. The document, for example, on the law, on accessibility, on interviewing. These tools are quite important and paramount. Thank you, Simon.
Thank you, Eric, and great that you managed to reconnect with your telephone. So tremendous, and yeah, and there's a comment in the chat box from Susan, yeah, on putting everything into apps. Great, thank you, Paul, thank you, Peter, Morteza, and Eric. There's some opportunity here to pose some questions to the panel, and I already see 2 questions in the chat box. So if you want to post them there or in the Q&A button, that's also okay. But there's one there from Sander from Light for the World, in which, Sander, you say, great resource, the toolkit. What we've noted at Light for the World in Uganda is that it is currently extremely difficult to recruit persons with disabilities due to the economic situation under COVID-19. Do you feel that being disability confident is a competitive advantage for companies in the current economic situation? Paul and Peter, could I pass that over to you? Do you feel that being disability confident is a competitive advantage for companies in the current economic situation? Paul, if you wouldn't mind. Paul, you are muted. Or Peter, are you there?
I am. This is Paul.
Hi, Paul.
Just reboot that, Simon, for me.
Yep. So the question from Light for the World, specifically with an experience in Uganda, the question is: do you feel that being disability confident is a competitive advantage for companies in the current economic situation?
Without a doubt, yes. And at Safaricom, we believe purpose, people before profit. And when you talk of leaving no one behind, that again talks of who you are as an organization, and it becomes a competitive employer branding proposition. So I would say that is one of the things that we said is a business imperative. It's not a nice to do. And therefore I would say, absolutely, that's one of the things that in terms of crafting our story as to why we should embrace inclusivity across everything we do, that would be one thing that I would say is a definite proposition for all organizations.
And thank you, Paul. Thank you very much. And we do see that across other companies. I think particularly in Kenya, but also in other places. Yeah, that whilst this period is tremendously difficult, there are leading companies like Safaricom and others who are investing this time in being ready to build back far more inclusively. So a second question, and
Simon,
yes, Peter.
Just to add on to what Paul has said. Part of our customers, our consumers of our products and services are persons with disability, and it makes business sense to have them have a say in the products and services that we come up with. And therefore, when we have persons with disability in the organization, we actually come up with more customized products that supports persons with disability across the market. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. A second question, which I will pass to Morteza, if you don't mind, Morteza. It's from Daphne from a little bit earlier. how do we motivate employers to use this set of guides and the toolkit?
Yeah, thanks, Simon. In terms of motivating the employers, what we're seeing is, to use the example of Unilever, when that commitment is there, for example, in Bangladesh, where they've set a very clear target of the number of people with disabilities they would like to have as part of their teams, etc. I think they're very much looking for ways to achieve those goals. And again, as they in the Bangladesh scenario are relatively early in their process to building their disability confidence, I think these are fantastic in terms of providing them that guidance in terms of how they can go about achieving some of these goals. So again, going back to, for example, the first shot framework I was talking about, that's incredibly useful for them to have a roadmap with which they can actually achieve their targets. And I think that practical usability of it, the use cases is very strong. And I think drawing out those examples and those good models will then motivate other employers to also roll it out. And it's great to hear that, we have these great examples from, Africa, Safaricom and others working on it. What we're seeing is when employers get behind it, it really helps to motivate others to do the same. So I think we're already having some good traction on the ground with it, and that will certainly help to move the agenda forward.
Thank you, Mortaza. There's also a question, actually the same question has popped up twice, from Dorodi and from Ibrahim. Thank you to all the panelists for excellent presentations. It would be good to hear how organizations of persons with disabilities or disability NGOs working at the national level can use these resources. What can they do? And a build on that question, from Shafiq from ADD in Bangladesh, also asking how we make these equally accessible and understandable to organizations of persons with disabilities at the grassroots level. Eric, can I pass this to you? How do we make these guides useful to organizations of persons with disabilities?
Thank you, Simon. Like to note that information and knowledge, for that matter, is power, and information and okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I was saying information and knowledge is power. And for that matter, information and knowledge that is documented is powerful. So these resources, when provided to persons with disability who belong to this disability persons organization, and they are taught how to use them, you say they are powerful resource for them to use, to be aware as they approach employers and employees. We note, for example, in this in Kenya, whereby the employment rate for persons with disability is about 1% compared to 73% for general public. Then these tools therefore come in handy to inform and empower us as persons with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. And I think we have time for one final question before we wrap up. And again, I'd like to pass this to Paul and to Peter. It's from Tamsin Lungford from ADD. This is a great resource. Well done to all. Any thoughts from employers in the panel regarding the best way to ensure cascading of this information and tools internally to deliver the culture change needed at organizations for disability inclusive employers? Paul, Peter, let me just again shorten the question. Any thoughts regarding the best way to cascade this information and these tools internally to companies like Safaricom?
I think the first thing is to say this must not just be another project outside of what you do as an organization. It must be in everything you breathe. And for us, I think we are clear. This will be in our purpose statement, but it will also go into our policies so that we can then ensure that that is now, we update those to be relevant. And thereafter then is to see how we get leadership buy-in. And I think for me, the best thing is to make sure that leadership championing of this becomes the key thing. And then monitoring and evaluation as we go along is one of the things that I would say. So for me is to say this has to be part of everyday life of the organization. Peter?
Yeah, and maybe just to add to that, we have a quarterly leadership engagement, and I believe that would be a very good forum to include this. And for our induction, for all our managers we induct, all our staff that we induct, we also have this as part of that. And then, of course, build this into the day-to-day content that we offer through our Safaricom Business School platform, which is an online platform.
Brilliant. Thank you, Peter, and thank you, Paul. I think there are some other questions, but I'm afraid we will perhaps have to answer those through the email system because we are rapidly approaching the hour limit for the webinar. So perhaps I could hand over to Stefan. I think Stefan, you also had some closing thoughts from ILO.
Yes, Simon. Thank you for that. Let me start thanking you, Simon, for the excellent collaboration with Site Savers. It's great that you have that you're launching this package of resources with us today. All the merits to you and your colleagues, and of course also Susan for doing this. I think it's particularly relevant in the current context to organize webinars like this. And I think it's very important to show to everybody that the corporate commitment to disability inclusion continues. Last week, as you know, the Kenyan Business and Disability Network was launched with active presence also of Safaricom. I think also in that context, the question that Sander from Light for the World, another important partner of our work, post was also addressed, no? and basically with the words that Paul from Safaricom mentioned, which is this. I think there's a current situation where the pandemic has made all of us, both at personal level or at organization level, reassess where the real priorities stand. No? And I think after perhaps an initial moment of doubt and concern and freezing, I think many good organizations are now realizing that the way out of the crisis needs to be a disability inclusive way. No? So I would say we are increasingly more optimistic about that. We will be organizing as ILO Global Business and Disability Network our annual meeting this year. It's virtually. It will happen next week, Monday. You're all more than kindly invited to that. And part of that launch will be also the adoption of the declaration through which all GBDN members, both global companies but also national networks, will reaffirm their commitment to disability inclusion in the current context. I think that is particularly important right now. I think what these resources are showing us that to a large extent, the discussion is moving from the why should we be disability inclusive to the how. And I think that is a very important move. I think these resources also are strongly based on this partnership approach. We think always that the best way forward is to strengthen the partnership between the private sector and disability organizations. And you have in this package of resources, you're addressing both groups, because I think both groups need to understand each other better. So I think that is also extremely important. So Simon, thank you again for the excellent partnership, for the great support that you've also provided for the launch last week of the Kenyan network, and definitely looking forward to more collaboration also in the current complicated context, but in a context which, thanks to events like today, I think we are together sending a positive message to everybody. Back to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stefan. You're very kind, and thank you to you and Fred for giving us this platform to launch the toolkit. There's an important question from Emanuela as we close out. Where do we get the tools? And I would just share my screen here, which gives you the link on where to download the tools on the inclusivefutures.org website. And don't worry, this link will be emailed to everybody along with the recording of this video, both to those who were able to attend and those who registered but were not able to attend this morning. But it is there on the screen on the inclusivefutures.org website, and the two options there on Disability Confident Employers Toolkit or simply Toolkit. www.inclusivefutures.org/toolkit. It's there now, and be okay to go and download it. But as I say, you will also get the email link to it. So to finalize, thank you very much to everybody who came today, this morning, this afternoon, this evening, and good luck with the toolkit. Do let us know, please, how useful it is and your own views on how to improve on it. And finally, thanks to Paul and Peter, to Mortazar, Eric, and of course Susan and the ILO team for facilitating this launch. Thank you very much, and stay in touch. Thank you.